Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to this week's podcast. There's a whole bunch to talk about, so I'm just going to jump right in. There's some updates on the PlayStation Classic console and ways to hack it. Someone had found a way to plug a USB stick into the console and then just edit the SQL database file in order to include the ROMs on that USB stick. I believe using this, theoretically, you could just load all the ROMs on there. You would just have to manually edit the file or create some kind of SQL script to add it. I talked to one person who did it, and he said it took about a half hour, so that's not too bad. Maybe we'll get one full hackable set or something that we could just download onto a USB stick and then have it automatically overwrite the SQL database file. But either way, it seems at least kind of neat and something to continue to pay attention to an otherwise useless console. Also, a few people had found that if you plug a very specific type of rare USB keyboard, you can get into the menus and change around some of the settings. At the time that I wrote this article, or that Ray wrote this article and I was researching it, it seemed like only one person had successfully done it, to the point where at first I honestly thought it could have been just a fake or some kind of, viral marketing thing or something. But I guess other people have been able to access this menu, add scan lines and things like that. But overall, it's kind of hard to say that both of these things combined would make this a viable solution for, a fun hacked console with a bunch of ROMs on it. And as always, the same thing I complain about with most consoles is I know a ton of people that loved their PlayStation, had a bunch of games, and they would love to just buy something that works. Granted, if you have a newer console that you could buy one of the PlayStation Classic downloads to it, that's a great solution for most people. But a lot of people that don't already have those consoles, what are they left with? So maybe we could do some more hacking to this and make it something at least worth looking at. But the bottom line is, a lot of people need more options in order to play these older games on newer consoles. And while there's always great ways to do that if you don't mind spending a lot of money and get awesome setups, it's rare to get an affordable solution that allows you to do it. So, unfortunately, that always ends up in hacking, in ROMs. The fact of buying a Raspberry Pi and loading a bunch of PlayStation ROMs and having a better experience. So hopefully these companies will start to take notice to this, and maybe we'll finally start to get some better classic consoles. It looks like someone was able to find a backlit LCD screen that fits in a Neo Geo Pocket color. There's not too much detailed information about this, but it seems to be pretty much the same aspect ratio, just a slightly smaller backlit color screen. The person will be willing to do installs for about $250, and if you would like to buy a pre-modded unit, it could be up to $400, which seems a little bit expensive to me. But to be honest, when I tried out the NGP, I went through a bunch of the games in the library. I tested using the Retro HQ ROM cart, which I loved, and it seemed like a great console. It's just the no light versions are equally as hard to see as all of the handhelds that don't have any lights, and I really just didn't like the front light version. I was able to get mine modded a second time to have a brightness adjustment built in, which helped a lot, because if you just leave it on the bright settings, most of the time all you see is glare. But it just wasn't a great experience. It almost reminded me of, I forgot what the name of the Game Boy Advance front light kits were, obviously before the SP AGS 101 came out, but it didn't look good. So while this is very expensive, if you love the Neo Geo Pocket Color, maybe this is the only way you'll be able to experience it in handheld form and actually be able to enjoy the games on a backlit screen. If anybody ends up getting one, please contact me. I would love to borrow it. I don't know how I could compensate you for that, but I'll try. And I'll be doing another Neo Geo Pocket episode at some point in the next 6 months, I guess. But, I'd love to revisit this with a backlit screen and see if it's worth playing. But either way, if nothing else, if anybody gets one of these, let me know and let me know what you think. I'm sure by now everybody's heard of Soulja Boy is releasing a retro game console that is quite literally just a rebrand of something you could already find on AliExpress. I really hope that nobody falls for this, and it makes me sad that somebody would resort to such a cheap cash grab. I mean, he's talented with a ton of followers and could make a difference doing many different things and still make a shitload of money on top. So to resort to a cheap rebranding like this seems pretty skimming the bottom of the barrel. I'm trying to find a nice way to say it. It makes him sound like a scumbag. I guess there's no other way to say it. There's so many ways for that guy to bring stuff to people, that much in the way that Quentin Tarantino brought the Tony Jaa movies over before most people in the States had heard of Tony Jaa. And, he stuck his name on it and made a little bit of money, but at the end of the day, we all get to experience a ridiculous martial artist. In fact, I might have to put this awesome Tony Jaa compilation video I watch in the comments, or down below, just for the hell of it. But honestly, there are so many things that somebody with that much power and money could do than rebranding something like this. So I'd liked a lot of his songs, but I definitely lost respect for him after this. My buddy Chris from Belgium just added a section to the different consoles and systems part of the website that talks about the Magnavox Odyssey 2 and the Video Pack, which are consoles that were released, the same console released under different names around the world. And he kind of went through and went over each kind and described what the differences are. So it's pretty awesome, and I'm really happy and grateful that more people are contributing. And eventually everything on the consoles and mod side will be moved over to that open source wiki. So if anybody else still wants to contribute, please consider just emailing me and figuring something out, because anything that you add to RetroRGB that's of archival use will eventually end up in something that's open source and hopefully will live forever. So, don't think of it as helping me out. You could hate my guts, still want to contribute and do good for the rest of the people. So, it's really cool that we get to see more of these, and thanks very much to Chris for taking the time to do it. A demo ROM of the Sega Genesis arcade port of Shinobi is now available to download. Trifon's conversion is still a work in progress, and I don't think it has any music or anything like that, but it's still trying to bring the arcade version of Shinobi to the Genesis. So I obviously love projects like this. I also love the color conversions and all that stuff, and things like this, for me, is why I truly appreciate ROM carts, even for games in which I have the originals of. So anybody interested, take a look at the link. Just keep in mind it is still a work in progress, so this is one of those things where you get to see the development still in the mid stages of it. Some updates to the Mr. FPGA platform this week. It looks like there's a new open source scaler that's being implemented into these cores, with the focus being on reducing lag as low as possible. Another benefit is that it uses a free software instead of the existing one that was $5,000 a year for the suite. So this is going to be complete open source, uses free tools to compile, and so far it has a focus on significantly reducing lag, which is awesome, because I do know a lot of people that want to use the Mr. platform either through streaming or flat screens, basically HDMI output. And at the moment, it seems like you could use the analog output through an OSSC, and it's pretty much crisp and as perfect a video signal as you could imagine. But the HDMI side still has a bit of lag. So I'm interested in testing how much lag this adds, but it was suggested that I just wait for a little while longer until some more of the tweaks are worked out. So I'll just sit off on that and probably do some more tests next week. Also, there's a bunch of updates listed for SNES, NES, the Amiga platform, Game Boy, Genesis, and ColecoVision. So a ton of good things that have been added. And also, it looks like the beginnings of a Game Boy Advance FPGA core have been started. I believe a group of students from Carnegie Mellon University has begun doing the FPGA implementation, and it's starting to be ported to Mr. by Electron Ash. So I think at the moment it only loads a homebrew game and the BIOS, but that's still, that's still a pretty impressive achievement in itself. With all the stuff going on with Game Boy Advance lately, it's cool to see it get some more love. I still think, I know people hate on me for saying this, but I love Metroid Zero Mission. And while I did find it a little bit too easy, I still prefer it over the original NES version. So I'm really happy that I get more ways to play that game on different platforms now. So as always, thanks to everybody involved in the Mr. platform and all of the FPGA work that's been going on. I really think this is going to be the future of how most people play these games on either a TV or even a CRT monitor, because there's only a finite number of consoles, and yes, there's millions, but how long are they all going to last versus cores that could just be ported to all future platforms? So thank you very much to everybody working on this stuff. and I can't wait to jump back in and start doing some more testing. Analogue has just announced a new cash grab, collaboration with the record label Ghostly in having a white version of the Super NT that offers a new boot up menu with sequences composed by 6 different Ghostly artists. So I'm obviously very critical of the company Analogue, and I always try to make sure that I'm very clear in my separation between Kevtris and Analogue. I'm a massive Kevtris fan. I completely fanboy out every time I get to talk to him. But the company that takes and sells his designs are who I am always critical of. And when I see stuff like this, I'm just like, there probably wasn't that much time to create something like this, and I'm sure it's a great marketing opportunity. The company does brilliant marketing, but why don't we have a re-release of the NT Mini? Or more importantly, if the focus of the NT Mini was NES, why don't you have a plastic spin-off version of that for, the same $200 or something? Why are we seeing things that no one asked for and not seeing the things that everybody asked for? Where's their analog adapter? Where's the RGB out that we've been promised for a year? So please correct me in the comments. I'm very often wrong with things like this. Sometimes it just takes a few commenters to change my perspective and for me to go, oh yeah, by doing this, probably got them to that. You shouldn't, walk a mile in a man's shoes before making judgment. But I see shit like this and I'm just like, what the hell, man? Where is all the stuff that their fans and loyal customers have been begging for? And in place we get something nobody asked for. I don't know. Comment away down below. I can't wait to hear other people's opinions on this. But I already own 2 of these things. I got one for me and one for Cousin Scott. I freaking love them. Absolutely love it. But yeah, I don't get it. The PSIO optical drive emulator for the PlayStation 1 is now available from purchase from Stone Age Gamer. At the time of shooting this, it looks like it's still in stock with them. And I, at least in my opinion, think this is a really good move and a good step in the right direction. The company Sibden Systems, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, they gained kind of a reputation last year with, long response times to emails. And then, a lot of us went 15, 16 months from the time of purchase to the time of receiving. So, in my opinion, having something in stock from a reputable reseller that does this for a living is a very quick way to gain people's trust back. You want it? Great. Buy it from a store. It's already in stock. I think that would erase people's fears pretty quickly, especially coming from a store that focuses on selling things like this. They commented last week on the Roundup. I'm not sure if they're regular watchers or if somebody just said that they got a mention about their FPGA firmware updates. I will get them info on from the expert that told me how to do it. I'll send that over, but that's one of those things. The firmware updates at this point is still my only real complaint because I don't like anything that's digitally signed per device. I do think it's a bad idea for everybody involved because it just creates more work for everyone across the board. But I completely understand why they would have implemented it at to begin with. For, security reasons, no cloning, things like that. But I'll try to get that over to them because there's still reports coming in of other issues. The one that stuck with me that that I always think back to is after I spoke about that on last week's podcast, a few people contacted me saying they were part of the original pre-order group. And they never got their account on their website. So when they went to get the newest firmware, they couldn't because they didn't have an account. So then now they have to wait through the long email response time. So hopefully they're working through all of these issues. It's a small team of people, so we got to give them that. They're not. It's not like Amazon that has a team of people waiting by the phone to take your call and answer emails. I would love to see progress in all this stuff, and I have one here. I still haven't even installed. I owned one a while back. I had to sell it when I sold everything else, but I have my new one here. I got to get to it soon. And the one thing that people had said is anybody that had problems with the newest firmware might have skipped one. So you might have to go back, get 2 firmwares ago, and then the newer one. I believe there might even be a newer update coming out that might solve that issue. So, they're getting there. They're getting there, steps in the right direction, and hopefully I'll be able to check it out and see if it's worth doing a video on. A ton of people have already done video reviews, so maybe I'll just go through and mention anything, anything worth talking about. But either way, I know a lot of people that have been waiting for this thing. So now, just check the link in the description, go straight to Stone Age Gamer, and buy it right in stock. It looks like the Dreamcast cable from Retro Gaming Cables is getting closer to release. I believe they had problems with board dimensions fitting around their new transparent shell, but I believe they got that all worked out, so it should be able to go together and should be released relatively soon. And I'm really excited about this because, in my opinion, for a long time, the only really good solution for the Dreamcast was the Toro. And the only real problem with the Toro is that not everybody needed all of those features. You know, I loved the scanline options, and dual output was great, so you can get from the VGA port and the SCART port at the same time. It really is, you know, it was worth the money if you wanted all those extra features. But I know a lot of people with a setup with a G-SCART, a Sony PVM, and an OSSC. In fact, I know a ton of people with that setup. And just being able to have a switchable SCART version that could work right as I just described, I think is excellent. Just plug it in, you know, for if you're using your PVM, flip it to 480i mode. If you're going through your OSSC, you could use both and even use 960p doubling for any TVs or capture cards that support that. I think it's awesome. I also think that I've been testing the cable from the Foo, which is great as well. He had a SCART adapter. I don't know if it's back up for sale or not. I was able to get one, but that's a VGA solution. That's similar in that it's got a switch. So if anybody that needs a D-sub connector that can handle all the different resolutions, that's a good solution. I'm sure between now and never, we're eventually going to get the HD Retrovision solution, which that will fix a whole other range of things. And that would be one that I would think would be good for analog and digital, should your flat screen monitor support it. And then of course the Dreamcast HDMI internal mod. So there's a lot of really cool stuff coming out for the Dreamcast. Expect a new video, teaser, coming up soon that highlights a lot of this stuff. I'm getting pretty excited, and it's really renewing my interest in the Dreamcast. Which is weird. I know you're supposed to just like the games, but when you could really experience the games the way they're meant to be played at the highest quality, it adds a lot to me, a lot more to the experience for me. So I'll keep everybody updated. Keep your eyes open for that, the Part 2 Dreamcast on flat screen TVs video that I've been promising for over a year now. And and as soon as I get one of these in from Retro Gaming Cables, I'm definitely going to put it through its paces. Another update from Professor Abrasive on his plug-and-play Saturn optical drive emulator. It looks like he's building the test rig, and once that's complete, he'll be able to finish the beta boards and send them out to Patreon subscribers that have subscribed to the beta testing level. I think it's finally starting to get to the point where he might be able to ship out more expanded beta units after that, so I'm hoping to get one within the next 3 months or so. But this is a project I've been following for a long time, and I did the interview with him a while back, and I'm really excited to finally try it. I have my Sega Saturn Model 1 with the shielded cable and everything all ready to go, just prepped and waiting for this thing. So any more updates, I'll definitely keep people in the loop, and hopefully he'll open up the beta program to the rest of his Patreons after the first wave goes through. A new kit was just created that adapts those cheap SNES USB controllers to the Amiga CD32. It adds features like button remapping, auto fire, and memory. And I think this is awesome because while I don't really know much about the Amiga, I do know that when you have those more rare consoles, controllers and any kind of decent accessories are really hard to find. And the Amiga controller did look a little weird. I've never used one. Maybe it's super comfortable. I honestly don't know. But I just think being able to take something that's a cheap, off-the-shelf, disposable device. It's those SNES USB controllers you can get for $8 or $9 each, and they're pretty decent quality. But I have no problem hacking one of those up as opposed to an original SNES controller. Being able to just grab that and adapt it for the console is great. I wish there were more solutions like this for other consoles, like the CDI, so you could play that one game with Hulk Hogan that's good or something. But I just all of the consoles that have really rare controllers or really uncomfortable controllers could certainly benefit for something like this. So thanks to Mick Guyver, who created the kit, and links for everything are below. So every time there's a new classic console announced, 8BitDo announces their wireless controller adapter for it. And they have not let us down, and now they have one for a PlayStation Classic. It's $20, and it should arrive on in late December, December 31st, they're claiming is the release date. And no word on if it supports rumble functions and DualShock, but I'd kind of be interested to see what else this could be used for, because it's essentially just a USB adapter. So maybe this could also be used for computers that don't have Bluetooth built in, or have... I've had laptops with kind of spotty Bluetooth built in, so it wasn't really reliable for a controller. So who knows, maybe this will work out. I think once this was released, though, the one thing I heard being echoed across the board was, you know, nobody asked for this, but everybody asked for the N64 wireless solution. When are you going to do that? So, you know, it's a good question. I wonder when they are going to do that. So hopefully they'll have a wireless dongle for the N64 as well, because I think using a PlayStation controller with the N64, while, you know, some people might look at that as blasphemous, maybe it'd be a good way to transition from that oddly shaped N64 controller to something more people are comfortable with and used to. Mobius Striptech has received the IFU boards for the SSDS3 RGB bypass. He's tested them and everything came out perfect, so now he's offering them for sale. He's selling them for $7 for just the board, which I think is insanely low, so thank you to him. $20 for the board plus installation, and of course you have to pay for shipping. Once again, I think that's insanely low, and $35 total if you want the installation of the Firebrand X audio board, although I believe he's not selling the board. You got to get that from Firebrand X and then ship it to him. So overall, I mean, those prices are really low, and he really is standing by his word on you know, trying to help the community and anybody that really loves the PC Engine and wants the best quality out of a device. You know, he's really helping do all that. So, you know, thanks once again to Voltar for designing the board and offering up the design for free. Do-it-yourselfers can find the design and the schematics and just make your own. Thank you to Mobius for doing all of this work on testing, as well as offering these installation services to fix a product that should have never shipped like this anyway. And same thing with Firebrand X. Thank you very much for your audio board and the low price that you're charging for it as well to fix the remaining audio issues that shouldn't have been there as well. So we all know how I feel about this device. I'm finally going to get my hands on one with these fixes and put it through its paces. I think I know what to expect, but who knows, maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised. Extremis has just updated the Game Boy interface software to support the HD Retrovision cables in 360p mode using PAL GameCubes. So a quick rundown, because that's a whole bunch of acronyms and stuff that people might not understand. NTSC GameCubes only output composite video and S-video, and anything higher than that you need one of the new adapters. PAL GameCubes do output RGB, so the HD Retrovision cables are compatible with them. So you can get technically 240p and 1080i component video output from a PAL GameCube. When using something like an Action Replay, so of course you'd have to get the PAL Action Replay, and an SD loader, you could use the Game Boy interface software through a PAL GameCube using RGB or component video, and it works excellent. I mean, it's a great high-quality image, and the new features, including the 360p output, are things that sometimes have compatibility issues. Now, I'm way oversimplifying this, of course, but the latest update to the Game Boy interface software allows for compatibility with this. And what I'd like to see as well at some point in the future is all of us to work together to get both, you know, to get all of the prospective outputs. So, you know, RGB or HD Retrovision from a PAL GameCube, and then of course RGB and component from some of the plug-and-play solutions through the OSSC as well. So that means custom OSSC timings for the different Game Boy interface modes. So I'll talk to a few people and work on that. I am not even close to an expert going through OSSC settings, nor have I ever pretended to be. So I'll talk to some people and see if we can get custom profiles for that. Just because, I mean, I really love this software. I talk about it all the time, and I think for people at the moment looking to game on Game Boy or Game Boy Advance games on RGB monitors, this is really an awesome solution. So I'll keep everybody posted, and I'll do some more testing when I can. The Behar brothers have just announced a new version of their Garo product, which is the component video to either VGA or RGB SCART. And this has a completely redesigned video buffer and a new sync circuit, as well as a new power stage. So essentially, it's completely redone from the ground up. It also uses surface mount components for a more cleaner look, which, in my opinion, that, I wouldn't judge based on that. But it's always nicer to have, one more step forward. And overall, there were a few problems in certain setups with the original version of the Garo. I didn't really see them in my setup, but I know a few people that did. So it's my opinion that if you own a Garo and you don't have any problems with your setup, definitely isn't something that you would need to look into. But if you were on the fence about buying one, or if the version you had did have issues, maybe it's time to pick one up. And sell your old one on eBay. Just be honest. Original version of Garo from the Behar brothers. Don't. Nobody disingenuous, put pictures of the actual thing on there. I think a lot of people would still like to pick up the older versions at a discount, just because it'll probably work fine in many situations. So I'll eventually get one in to test it out. But overall, I mean, it seems like there's a few specific cases where this would really fit a need. I think the one case that many people have used, which I showed off in one of my videos a while back and a few of my friends have, is they have a Gcomp switch with a bunch of component video devices. Then they use good quality cables going into this, and then stick this into the final port of a gscartsw switch. So essentially there's one solution that has all of their outputs that go into a monitor. The reasons for this would be both because now you have an automatic switch that you don't have to worry about anything at all, or also if you have monitors that don't accept component video. So XM29s, Mitsubishi Megaviews don't accept component through their RGB ports. So this would be a solution for that as well. So looking forward to trying it out. I'm glad to see new stuff from the Behar brothers, and I'll keep everybody updated if I get one in. HD Retrovision have announced that they have their new shipment of cables in, but will still keep their own store closed for the time being, so they could focus on research and development and hopefully get those Dreamcast cables out. But they should be available probably by the time this goes live from Castlemania Games or Retro Stuff in Canada, as well as in-store in Brooklyn Video Games if you're around the New York City area. So love that store. They're really hardcore support in the RGB component retro gaming scene around here. So anybody that's interested, now the cables are back in stock and available. And I mean, I love them. I have a full RGB setup, but it's gotten to the point that when I go to do any kind of testing, I grab the HD Retrovisions just because they're like my Swiss Army knife of cable now. So anybody that's wanted one, check it out. And yes, I do realize this is the same picture from the October update, but I loved that one so much I wanted to use it again. Whatever. John Romero has announced a SIGIL expansion pack for the 1993 original Doom video game. This megawatt expansion is the spiritual successor to the 4th episode and picks up where the original left off. John said it would be free for people that own the original game. So I'm not sure how you would verify a licensed original copy of a 1993 video game. If they explained it and I just didn't understand, please let me know and I'll update the post and correct it next week. But either way, if you want to purchase it, you could get 2 different collector's editions featuring artwork by Christopher Lovell, who's done covers for pretty awesome metal bands like Byzantine, who I opened for once. Pat myself on the back there. Very, very rare I get to brag about stuff like that. And exclusive music by Buckethead, who any guitar nerd knows he's, is one of the top people out there. So that's pretty exciting. There's 2 versions, the standard edition for $40 and then a $166 Beast box that will be available from Limited Run Games. No word if they're going to be a Best Buy exclusive or just through the store. And they should be available in February. So details on what's included in these different limited editions are available both on the Limited Run Games site as well as right on the Romero Games site. There's way too many to list out, and I didn't want to just copy and paste in the post, so if you're interested, definitely check it out there. And also, along with this announcement came one of the most badass trailers I have ever seen in a long time. I highly recommend, if you're a fan of Doom, to check it out. It's just the trailer and the music in this reminded me how much I loved that game. I'm very excited that now I get to play it in many better ways, because the low frame rate of my crappy ass computer as a kid used to make me dizzy. I think I played Wolfenstein and Doom at like 4 frames a second or something. I used to love playing it, but every 10 minutes I'd have to take a break and I'd end up being seasick and have to like have a glass of water and sit down and then go back and keep playing it again. So yeah, it seems pretty cool, and it's something I definitely want to check out when it's released. Sega has just announced remakes of the first 2 Panzer Dragoon games, and according to Forever Entertainment, the new version of the games will be characterized by completely new graphics, comparable with today's standards, and several modifications of the game, making it more attractive to modern players, while remaining faithful to the original in terms of story. So I hope that ends up being like Wonder Boy and not like DuckTales, because those were always my 2 go-tos on, if you want to look at the greatest way you could take an old game and redo it for modern standards. I loved how they did Wonder Boy: A Dragon's Trap. I thought that was really great, and I will always play that one over the original. Whereas DuckTales, I didn't get more than 20 minutes into it. It just made me want to go back and play the original on the NES again. Either way, both of these games are looking to release before the end of 2019, so I guess it'll be about a year, and we'll be able to see if this thing holds up to the hype. So let's keep our fingers crossed. A new Genesis game called Rhythm Land is due to be released in February 2019, featuring music from the same creator of Streets of Rage, Revenge of Shinobi, and ActRaiser soundtracks. It's going to be available as a cartridge for about $55, and you could pre-order it now from Amazon in Japan. I've seen this game also talked about as an 8-bit Famicom version, so I believe they're probably releasing them side by side, this being the Genesis version and also separately a Famicom version. And I think that one's available on PlayAsia as well, but most of the info I've found about this game is in Japanese, and I can never really rely on Google Translate to get it right. So anyone interested, check it out, and if there's some details that we missed, please let me know down in the comments. Super G has posted some updates to the status of his different Switch projects. First, for the latest G-SCART switch, Sync on Green has been tested, and all resolutions up to 1080i are supported and seem to be working fine through the OSSC, through pretty much everything he's thrown at it. He just needs to make a small modification to the small batch of switches that have already arrived in order for this to be fully compatible with everybody. And he's still debating what to do about the sync correction features. I think he's going to give it one more try this weekend, and if not, he might just wait till the next revision. It's my personal opinion that, a lot of people just don't need that feature. So as long as there's a revision difference on the board itself, something very clear so that you could see, which revision is compatible with which features, as long as that's the case, I see no problem in shipping those. I guess it'd be kind of a pain to contact everybody and see who needs the feature and who doesn't. But for me personally, I'd rather just wait and get the feature. But I know a lot of other people just don't care because it doesn't apply to them. This feature is really for people with the BKM68X card or any of the DH series monitors like the 9-inch I have here or the 14-inch, or for a couple of other use case scenarios that may or may not fix it. So in my opinion, as long as it's not too much trouble for Super G, ship out what you got, continue to test, and then make that other larger batch and have the sync correction built into that one. Just make sure to mark them so people who need to buy them used in the future will be able to tell. Also, the design of the 8x2 Gcomp switch is underway, so the 8-in and 2 dual outputting component video switch. And this is great because I know a lot of people whose component video consoles are starting to grow, especially with people who predominantly game through GameCube and PS2 and Xbox, but also want to use the HD Retrovision cables. Now this would be the perfect solution. One out to your RGB monitor and one out to your OSSC into your capture card, or however else you want to do it. But I think that's going to be 6 months away, I would guess. So definitely don't get your hopes up quite yet. but it's underway. It's definitely going to happen, and I would guess that we should have it in hands by the end of 2019, but probably sooner. So in my opinion, all positive news, and I can't wait to start testing the sync regeneration thing whenever he has it finished. No rush, in my opinion. Someone has just created a mod for the DE10 Nano, the same FPGA device used in the MiSTer platforms, and been able to make a cheat device like a Game Genie for the Atari 2600. I'm actually pretty surprised that something like this doesn't already exist. I believe you could patch ROMs, but I just assumed a hardware solution already was in the works, or was already available, but I guess not. Either way, it's neat. I enjoy projects like this, and anybody interested, maybe now's the time to buy one of those DE10 Nanos and use it for a multitude of different things. After watching Ray Commend's review video last week of the Arcade 1-Up, I kind of lost hope on it. I was thinking maybe it would be a good enough toy, or maybe you could mod it for something fun, but it just seemed overall like it wasn't worth my time. But there's been some pretty interesting things that have happened in the past day or so alone. First, it seems like you're able to solder in a USB jack and access all of the MAME menus, as well as add games and even access games that were already there but hidden. It's really just as easy as taking a USB extension cable and then cutting one end off and soldering it right to the points that Reddit user Berry Sneaky have found, and then you can get right in and just add games directly to that. On top of it, the Tempest version, it's actually the Asteroids version, but I like Tempest more, so whatever. The Tempest version just went on sale for $200 at Walmart. So if you take all of this stuff into consideration, you have a spinner controller on this thing. The spinner controller seems to be all the way to the right, leaving a lot of space on the rest of it. You might be able to take this and hack it so you can get every spinner game on there, and maybe even driving games. Use the spinner controller as the wheel and stuff like that. So just for the $200, you might be able to load this thing up. And not only would it just be a toy, just having things like a roller ball or a spinner would add to the experience. It's still not something a serious gamer would use, but the first time I played Marble Madness with a roller ball, the original arcade version, was only a few years ago, and it blew me away at how much different and how much better a game it was just by being able to use the roller ball. So there's certainly exceptions for laggy low-end emulation. And I'm not saying all emulation's laggy and low-end. I'm saying stuff like this that's laggy and low-end on a cheap device. It might still just be worth fun to play with. For me personally, I'm still ordering parts and getting everything finalized on this mini CRT arcade thing over here, which is using a Raspberry Pi and a roller ball and all that stuff. But, that's a lot of work, and this doesn't look like a lot of work. This looks like some very basic beginner level soldering with just some very standard MAME skills to be able to load up more ROMs. So I'm certainly going to consider it for $200. I do understand that it's not going to look so good. It's probably, at least a few frames of lag, and, who knows. But $200's about a price where I think, if you could load up all the games that I would want to play with a roller ball, maybe it is worth it if you have the space for it. So let me know what you think. If anybody in the New York area has one of these things, let me know. Maybe we'll meet up and figure this thing out and see what we could add to it and if it's really worth working on. But it's definitely making me reconsider this, and who knows, maybe they'll sell really badly and Walmart will dump them off even cheaper. Either way, if you're interested, check it out and see what you think. And speaking of silly toys, there's now a Game Boy Color iPhone case for $35. So I saw one of these last year with a monochrome screen, and it's just a cell phone case that you slap to the back of your phone. There's a ton of different compatible phones with it, and you just use it as a Game Boy. I believe it's powered off the phone too. And it just looks like a fun and neat toy. And to be honest, this is one of those things that, depending on which phone I had and, how big it was, I might buy just for a fun, silly thing to talk about. Just leaving it on the table somewhere and just seeing the looks on people's faces like, is that a Game Boy? That might make me giggle. But either way, it's not a serious gaming device. It has some of those hacked ROMs like Mario's Brothers or, Happy, which is just hacked versions of the original NES games. So, anybody that wants one, there's a coupon code, and I found this on Redmond Pi, so I always try to pay attention, and very often my sources for things are many different places. I'll hear about it from one thing and then go do some research, and I'll post the original link. This is one of those times where I wanted to make sure that I left the link to Redmond Pi so people wouldn't think I was just posting this to make 10 cents off of a coupon code. It's Redmond Pi's coupon code. I just talking about it because there are many of us in the retro gaming scene that love silly toys like this. Even though they're not great gaming devices, it's still kind of hilarious. So if you get one, let me know if it's worth buying or if it just ends up being a fun gag gift. And lastly, an arcade game from the Sega System C2 platform has just been ported over to the Sega Genesis. Dustin Odell has converted Sega Sonic Brothers to the Genesis and posted a video of it playing pretty much perfectly. Once the game is complete, he said he's going to release the ROM freely and encourages others to translate or hack it. I think it's pretty cool that there's more arcade conversions going on, whether it's just the color conversions or full system conversions like this, because as I always say, it's pretty easy to track down all of the games that you want to play on a console, whether you need ROM carts, CDRs, or whatever, but it's impossible to get every arcade game. So the more arcade games that you have that are able to be played on easier platforms like this, or the more arcade multis that people come out with and all that, are always a huge help to everybody in the arcade or gaming scene that want to keep these games alive. So thanks to Dustin for doing this. I'm looking forward to checking it out. Coin Retro just uploaded an overview video of how to use the Datapath Vision capture cards, which so many of us in the retro gaming scene have been using for its OSSC compatibility, as well as even direct in from older consoles. I think it's a great video to start with because there's so many things that you could talk about. I'll eventually get into this. I just need to get a handle myself on some of the quirks and shortcomings. But basically, he took the work that Dark Aries had done, both in his wiki and in the new app that he had built to use it, the VCS app, I believe, and just did an overview of that. And a quick rundown of everything is, if you're using 480p and up for the Datapath card, and you just want to do screenshots, it's really easy. You actually could just use the Vision app, and you just have to always set the color to 888 and set the other setting to slow. And that's pretty much it. You can size the window any way you want, but when you do the screen capture, you can save a bitmap or a PNG, and it's great for comparison shots. For streaming, there's a few different ways you could do it, and of course for video capture for comparison shots, always make sure you use software designed to capture it in the exact original format. You could run into issues if you're capturing with OBS and not Amarec, because OBS will just use whatever codec it wants, and you could use something like Amarec to tell it exactly how to save it. So for ED, extended definition, 480p, whatever you want to call it, 480p and up, it's pretty straightforward. But once you start getting down into direct RGB in and 240p resolutions, things start to get a little crazy. You even get the bug that Steve from HD Retrovision found, is when you set all the settings in and you hit OK, it doesn't save the settings, at least on certain versions of the firmware, which led a lot of us to think that maybe it doesn't process 240p correctly, but it does. You just have to use these weird tricks, which Coin Retro does show in the video. And I'm still trying to determine exactly what it requires for RGB input. So if you have a converter that's DVI to component video, which I think I have right here, I have links in the description to this exact adapter. It is the DVI to component video. All you would need is some RCA couplers or something. I think I just use these basic ones. And that way you could put in component video right into this. That should work. So if you're using something like the HD Retrovision cables or a PlayStation 2, you should be able to hook it right up, follow Coin Retro's video and Dark Area settings, and everything should be fine. But I've had mixed issues with RGB directly in. I distinctly remember being able to just use some adapter cables I made, because I have a ton of these things I've made over the years that's VGA to SCART or something like that for this exact reason. I definitely remember being able to use those on the Datapath card, but when I went back to test again, I had issues. So maybe you need TTL voltage, maybe you need sync strippers, maybe you need something. Maybe I was going through like an Extron device or something. I've done so much testing over the years, I really don't remember, but there's still a lot that really needs to be nailed down on proper procedure for the Datapath cards. I know Voltar was working on a new board. I have his prototype board here for the input stuff, which ignore the wire. It's me doing some experimenting. But overall, I still think that as long as the documentation is good, as long as we have more videos like Coin Retros, this could still be the perfect card for just direct capture. And as I've been starting to learn with some of the quirks of the OSSC, it might even be best for me to do some of my comparison tests direct into the Datapath card with something like this, and then use Photoshop or Premiere or something else to scale it up, rather than going through the OSSC just to test the differences and weirdness with some of the mods that I'm doing. So, sorry for ranting on a little too long about this. It's just, back when Cruz first told me about the Datapath cards 2 years ago now, I've been using them, and I've either had awesome experiences or run into a bunch of trouble that were essentially all my fault because I didn't know the weird thing like hit cancel instead of OK or all that stuff. So I think because of the cost of these things, and even the older ones that are analog only, this could be a great choice for a lot of people, and I just want to continue the documentation. So thanks to Coin Retro, thank you very, very much to Dark Aries and for your wiki, and I'll continue to use this thing and see if I could get the best tweaked out of it and maybe add a page or do a video of my own on it. Wow, that was a lot of cool stuff this week, and that's all thanks to the new people contributing articles to RetroRGB. I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to everybody who's been doing the writing. I really love when I open my phone and I see an article pop up and I don't even realize it's on RetroRGB. I'm just reading through like, oh wow, this is interesting. It's absolutely awesome. I hope to continue to grow this. And I'll soon be adding like an About Us section that explains who we are. And I'll try to do more to support the people that are writing these articles, because I really just want this thing to turn into something that just runs itself, because there's so much great information out there, and no one human, or even 2 or 3, could get to all of it. So just having more people that are experts in their field, or just people that are always, fans of certain forums might even be great. One that I always miss is Sega 16, and although I do check out Atari Age, I think I don't know a lot of the stuff that they're talking about, so I might skip over some awesome Atari XT thing that I didn't realize was awesome. So anybody that's that's a forum lurker and has their favorite forum, maybe reach out, and you could be in charge of stuff that happens on that forum and post news articles. But either way, I think, also the more people you get involved, the less work it is for everybody else. So you don't have to have one person writing 50 articles a week. You could just, if you see something cool, you put it up there. If you get to it first, great. If somebody else did it, did it already, whatever. But either way, it's just exciting to see this thing grow. And, it's always a question for me of, I've never introduced myself as RetroRGB. It's always Bob from RetroRGB. So it's going to be interesting to see how everything goes forward with all these amazing people contributing now. But I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. For now, just a massive thank you to everybody who supports the site, the podcast, and the channel. And an extra special thank you to all of the Patreon supporters who make this happen. And I'll see everybody next week.